Welcome to Contractor Cuts, where we cover the good, the bad, and the ugly of growing a successful contracting company.
Thanks for joining us again this week. So today we are diving into how to guarantee growth in the new year. You know, we talk a lot about what you need to do day in and day out, but what we are covering today is how do we turn it from this year to next year and successfully plan going into the new year. This is a shameless promotion for our retreat that we do in January. But the whole reason behind why we do it.
Classic.
Yeah. But also, like, what do we do on those? If you're not coming on the retreat, what should you be doing on your own to assess this year and to plan out next year? Why do we zoom out? Why do we take that time? What do we do during that time? And if you're going to do it on your own, whether you come on the retreat or do it at home or do your own little mini retreat, what should you be doing during that time? So we've been doing them since 2016 as a company. I think it was when we started just internally. It was me, you, and Jared, and then we started bringing some other people from the team. And then it turned into, as we started doing the coaching and consulting, we've started bringing in, I think, 4 years now that we've been doing it with a number of our coaching clients coming along on the trips with us. So it's kind of a big group project. James, run through kind of what a company and like what you, when you're growing the company, we'll talk about what we do on the retreat next and kind of what you should be doing to plan it. What do you get out of that time when we take a second to go like 30,000 foot view look at your company? What's the goal there?
There's everybody goes through, like, you have a million ideas every day of like, oh, this could be better. Ooh, we really need to do this. Ooh, we really need to do that. Yeah. And finding the time to get some of that stuff, like really think through some of that stuff and figure out how am I going to, how am I going to
execute?
Not execute. How am I going to implement that for my company? I think the retreat is a great spot to get some of those things fleshed out, because you don't always find the time or like have the space to think 30,000 foot view when you're doing this reactive stuff every day that just comes as part of the job.
Yeah.
So like, for instance, very few people I think use materials paid to vendor if they are paying those materials to vendor. Mm-hmm. You know, you're working with a cabinet person and it's a $24,000 job, and you put all of that in labor. And you're going to be paying that out taxes on labor instead of what,
separating out.
Yeah, 60% of that's probably material.
Yep.
So stuff like that, where it's like, I need to figure out how to make sure that either me or whoever my project managers are, that we're doing that, because it's going to save us on the back end. If you look at your numbers for this year and you're reviewing, how do I make more profit? That's one spot that I think every single person that uses the software can find profit, is using that more accurately.
Yeah. Well, and I think like what you're saying, I feel like day in and day out throughout the year, there's so many times it'd be so cool if we did this. Mm-hmm. It'd be great if if we can just change how we do this. But the implementation side is, you need the capacity to be able to pull out and take a minute to, how are we going to implement it? What are we going to do to implement it? What does that look like? And take 4 hours to go over implementing some of these changes in your process. You don't do that in the normal day in and day out. We don't sit back and say, okay, let's take half a day to plan out how we're going to do this, and the second half of the day to figure out why and how we're going to roll out to our employees.
You need to play a little bit. It requires play. Yeah. And like that, honestly, that's what these trips have always felt like to me, is like, we have a ton of fun, and there's stuff that, like, there's extracurriculars. You're just hanging out with guys and sharing war stories and stuff. But it's so important. Like, and we'll talk about, I think, in the ADHD stuff we talk about all the time. It's like, you need to have fun. You need to integrate play into what you're doing. And when you're looking at like these boring processes and stuff, this is a great space to be collaborative with people that are in your industry, chat with them about how do you do this? Do you do this? How do we do this? And that exchange is a lot of fun. Stuff comes out that you're like, I would have never have thought of that because I don't think that way, but that's a really good idea. Like it resonates with you. So
pick each other's brains.
Yeah.
Why do you do it that way? How are you doing this? Where it's kind of a fraternity of people coming together to help all of us grow at the same time.
Yeah. And it's space a way that like you should do this if you're coming. You need to let your clients know. You need to let, your people that work with you, if they're not coming with you, know this is, I'm unavailable.
Yeah.
Obviously emergencies pop up, guys pop out on the phone all the time on these things, but the folks that are like, I'm going to commit myself to experiencing this trip and, gleaning everything out of it that I can, those guys get the most out of it.
Yeah.
When I can actually separate myself from what's going on at home and all of the work and all of the, deadlines, I can actually start to play with some of those processes and figure out how do I want to implement this.
So if you're doing this on your own, if you're not coming on the retreat, or if you do come on the retreat and you want to know what it's going to be like, the way we break the retreat down is pretty simple. We start looking at the past. We look at the last year, the last 12 months, and there's a bunch of worksheets that you do before the retreat where you're starting to plan, pull financials together, pull that. But the goal is what's working and what's not working. Let's be real on assessing our business, ourselves. We've had guys come on this retreat where we're like, okay, so, scale of 1 to 10, where would your average customer put you? Oh, 10. Okay, so how many customers? 100% of my customers thinks I'm a 10 out of 10. Mm-hmm. Well, you're probably not honest with yourself. Let's talk about where there could be slippage there. Where if someone didn't give you a 10, what's going on? And so we try to dive down and figure out what's currently the most broken part of your systems and processes. What are you implementing that we have?
I mean, nothing broke, man. It's just these clients, man. These
everybody else
just suck, man. They're just everybody.
I hired this guy and he ruined everything. Yeah. So it's looking at the last year, saying, okay, we're gonna systematically walk through the year. What did the growth look like? And if you came last year's retreat, what were your projections? What were you trying to hit? And what did you win in and what did you lose in? Why didn't we hit that? Oh, I wanted to hire 4 guys this year. I hired 2. But what happened was this, and this. So it ended up being a net positive. And so we look at that to assess the history. So then we can change how we do next year, right? If you can't just keep doing the same thing over and over again. A lot of companies, when they come and we start doing coaching, it's like, I'm tired of grinding and ending up in the exact same spot next year. And it's been 5 years I've been running this company, and I feel like at the end of year 1 and the end of year 5 feel exactly the same spot. Mm-hmm. It's because you're doing the same thing over and over again, year over year. So it's how do we break those processes that aren't working and implement new processes? So we start with looking at last year. What happened? What's good? What's bad? Let's look at your financials. Let's look at your debts. Let's look at your sales. Let's look at all of that stuff. What's positive? What's negative? We break all that down, and then we go and start looking at next year. So what has to change? Let's project out what's going on. Let's look at realistic projections, lay those out as to realistic. I think I've mentioned on this before on a podcast. We've had guys that come in and say, hey, by November, I want to make my first hire. And we say, wait, why by November? Well, I just feel more comfortable waiting till then. And we start breaking down when they can make their first hire. And it's like, well, you should do that by May. Like, let's look at these numbers. You've got growth. You've got new customers. It's time to hire that project manager. And they're like, you're right. I can do that by May. Mm-hmm. And so we set goals January, February, March, April to set up for that hire in May. And if it pushes to June, that's okay. We can assess, we can change, but let's set some goals that are achievable, but also big goals that you're working towards.
And some of those goals better be stacking cash to burn on a hire.
Yep.
Because you're gonna.
Yeah. That's one of the big, like, $30,000 that I'm going to burn when I make this hire. And if it works out, awesome. If it doesn't, I can fire him and I'm not upside down. I'm not going on my credit card to make payments. I'm not going into debt from upcoming job deposits to pay this guy's salary, right? So it's if I want to make a hire, most of the time when we come in to coach these companies, they're saying, hey, I think we need a new guy. I'm going to start looking to hire them. And it's literally an overnight decision to make a hire. And I start listing on Indeed to find someone. And it's like, that's not, you can't start hiring today for a hire that you want tomorrow. It's got to be laid out to where I'm 3, 4, 5 months ahead of the goal of when and how I'm going to hire. And these are all the steps that I'm going to take and the boxes I'm going to check before I give us permission to make that hire.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we've learned the hard way throughout the years that we've been doing this, of bad hires are the number one reason that we've lost money.
Yeah.
And so making the hires, budgeting money, what's the cues that says that you've got a green light to hire, and then we're setting out the plan, right? We're setting out over the next 12 months, each quarter, this is my goal. And so then we can keep the accountability where we're meeting and doing coaching or doing any of our business meetings that we have where it's like, okay, hey, we said we're going to do this by end of March. We aren't even close. What's going on? What have we failed at? What's changed? Let's reassess the next 9 months of this year and make those adjustments.
Yeah. And that's not always a negative thing. Like when the market has dictated that you're not growing right now.
Yeah.
That's okay. If you planned, we're going to hire this person. Like have this plan to hire this guy as a 1099 as a kind of a ramp into a project manager and see if he's got the goods. That keeps getting pushed back because election was going on. No one's doing anything. No one's making moves. We had to push that back. That's okay.
Yeah.
Like that's a decision that you're making for the betterment of your company. You're going to hold back on that decision because the money's not there right now.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, talking about that specific hire, it's like through the summer we were talking about it, and then it got to a spot of if we can land a bunch of new work, great. If not, we see winter's coming. We know what winter looks like. We know what election season looks like.
Be more specific, not just a bunch.
Yes.
But we need to land $150,000 of job to cover these 2 months to make it make sense to hire somebody.
Above and beyond the current average work that we're doing. And so we plan marketing around that. And if we get it, great, we can make the hire. But we're also looking at election, and then we're going into November, December, January, which are always the slow months for us in residential. And so we say, okay, we know that by March we're going to have that business. If we can get X, Y, and Z done before then, we can go ahead and pull the trigger. If not, January, February, we're going to start having that conversation to pull the trigger, ease that guy into that job, and by March he's trained up. We got the new jobs hitting, we're good to go. So it's a game plan financially based around, if this, then that. If this, then that other thing happens. If this other thing happens, then we're not going to go that way. But all of that gets done on these retreats, right? That's what we do. We sit down and look at it and say, this is how we're going to make those decisions. And you're sitting there with other people in the industry and us as your coaches saying, hey, what you're saying there is not going to work. And let me tell you why. That actually, a better way to do that is this. And we're all talking as companies that are there together that, I mean, we've got hundreds of years of experience in the room in terms of everyone that's helping. Actually, I tried it that way. That didn't work really well for me. What we ended up doing was this, right? And so the goal is to get a space to where your management team, if you got a team, or just you, your wife, whatever it is, get to a retreat to where you can step back, look at and assess this past year. We're going to look at what the next year is. And I think one of the big things that we also do that's kind of missed but is very effective is I always like to set, because it's a room full of entrepreneurs, right? And so I like to set, when do I say no to opportunities? Because we always say yes to opportunities as entrepreneurs. Oh, I'm going to start a dumpster business. I'm going to start a cabinet business. Oh, we're going to start in 2 new cities. We're going to do.
I'm so pressed for time, and then all of a sudden, man, it'd be so killer if I knew like $400 per dumpster. Like I could do this. I could
make
start
so much money. Well, but the night before you're talking to your wife, like, I mean, I'm working 60-hour weeks. I don't know where I'm going to find time to do my job.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, I'm going to start this company.
It'll solve a problem.
I'm spending, and I've said this before, like when we started our HVAC company, it was because we were spending $50,000 a month on HVAC. We're like, easy. That's just cash in hand. Done. And it's
a whole nother business,
yes.
a whole nother set of issues, a whole nother set of insurance requirements. Everything's different.
Everything. So that being said, having spots where people are asking you these tough questions and making you think about stuff that you normally don't think about is where growth happens, right? You don't just start growing because I'm working hard. You're going to hit that ceiling by yourself, running a company, working hard to get there. Working hard
Not me. I'm a grinder, man.
Yeah. And working hard is great and is required, but isn't where growth happens. Growth happens in the planning and the assessment and the honesty with yourself of what's working and what's not working, and having outsiders that know your company that look at you and say, I feel like you're kind of struggling with X, Y, and Z. I feel like the personal accountability isn't happening. Let's talk about how you can increase that. I feel like you're really not leading your team really well because of X, Y, and Z. What if you try to do with this stuff, right? And so having that space to have those conversations and how am I going to change is what guarantees growth next year.
Yeah.
So that's it. If you want to come on the retreat with us, again, shameless promotion, we'd love to have you. Go to prostruct360.com. You can sign up for the retreat there. You send us a contact and we can talk through and kind of give you more information. It's January 13th and 14th. It's in Nashville, Tennessee this year. We're breaking it up to a couple different things, but this is going to be a time that you can take to grow your company. Yeah. If you can't afford it, contact us. We've got some scholarships that we do for the retreat where it's kind of discounted for different things if we have those conversations with you. So don't let money be in the way of your growth next year. Come on the retreat, get some knowledge, launch your company going into 2025. We've never had anyone regret coming on one of these. It's always a time where you walk away with so much knowledge, refreshed, energized, having fun, hanging out with a bunch of people. So we'd love to see you there. If you want to join us, prostruct360.com. We'll talk to you then. All right.